You're listening to the Nerd to Know Media Network. Join us at nerdtoknowmedia.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it's now time for our main event. Take a trip back in time to the golden era of the wrestling world with your host, Chris Techrold Blade. Welcome to Once Upon a Turnbuckle.
So here we are, back with another episode of Once Upon a Turnbuckle, and I must say, this year the guests keep on coming. I'm so grateful for the guys that I've been able to talk to, since I decided to really launch into this properly since the new year. And at times, I put out pleas, I put out sort of little adverts to encourage people to come on and talk about their stories. And this particular guest followed one of my recent posts, and once I saw the kind of things that he had to talk about, I decided he needed his own show. So I've had before, I've had guys who have been in the ring competing. I've had guys working outside the ring. I had a familiar voice on before, ring announcer Brad Storm, and it's my great pleasure to bring onto the show another fantastic ring announcer to give his take on the wrestling industry and beyond. Mike Falvo, welcome to the show.
You flatter me, and I love it.
Well, it's much deserved. I mean, I say ring announcer, but from the first message I know I got from you, that's a bit of a lie, isn't it? Because you haven't just done the ring. It may be what you sort of gravitate towards, but it's not everything that you've done.
Let's just say it's a slight fib. Okay, it's not a complete lie. No, you're correct though. I mean, I try to stretch out my abilities as much as possible. What you saw on my resume or whatever you want to call it. I've done college basketball here in New York. I've done professional football, semi-pro football, high school football, American football, that is, with the helmets and the pads and all that other stuff. I mean, I've done some ice hockey and lacrosse. I mean, I try to stretch it out as much as possible, but it's not just ring announcing. It's also, mixed martial arts that I've done. I love being in the ring with a microphone in my hand. Cool.
So is there a first question, I suppose, off the bat, is there any difference between doing it for events like wrestling or MMA to, basketball and that kind of thing? Is it the same kind of, do you bring the same energy to it, or have you got a different kind of get up for them all?
Well, when it comes to pro wrestling, I mean, pro wrestling is pro wrestling. It's a show. So you go out there and, you ring announce, but also you're there to put on a bit of a show for the fans. When it comes to basketball, yes, you have to keep up that same energy, but it's not as, what's the term I'm looking, flamboyant, if you will. Sure, you go out there and you announce the players and you try to put as much energy into announcing the players, but it's more reserved, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
More of a professional atmosphere. Because with professional wrestling, you work for a promoter, and their biggest thing is put on a show, make the fans happy, and this, that, and the other. Whereas when you announce, say, if you announce in the NBA, you're not the one putting on a show. No. The 10 men on the court are the ones putting on the show for the fans. You're there to just kind of hype the crowd up and keep them energized. Yeah. So there are differences, and mixed martial arts is as close to pro wrestling without pro wrestling as you're going to get. Just look at Bruce, guys like Bruce Buffer with the UFC. He goes all into it and puts his all into it, and that's part of the show. Yeah. It's all a show in some way, shape, or form.
So let's go back to the beginning. This is what I like to do, really. I mean, this whole podcast is sort of me reminiscing and asking other people to kind of go right back to where they discovered certain things. So in terms of the wrestling side, when did you first become a fan? You know, what really drew you in? What was the era? What was going on?
My father lied to me. That's what happened.
Okay, cool.
No,
Good start.
he seriously did. I was 8 years old, and he came home one night, and he says to myself and my younger brother, he's like, "Boys, finish your homework. After dinner, we're gonna go someplace and get some ice cream."
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'm 8 years old. I'm all about ice cream, you know. So we get in the car, and we're driving, and we start passing ice cream shops. And I'm like, Dad, he goes, "Don't worry, I know a place, don't worry." So we're driving, and we get to, now I'm from Utica, New York. And for your listeners that are not familiar with Utica, New York, it's almost the geographical center of New York State, which is pretty big in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And in Utica, we have the Utica Memorial Auditorium. Big arena, probably 4,000 or 5,000 seat arena. Normally they play ice hockey in there. So it's a pretty big building.
Yeah.
So we pull up to the auditorium, and I'm like, this is not an ice cream shop. And yeah, and my dad goes, "Don't worry, I got it taken care of." So I'm okay. So we get up to the building, and our cousin comes out. "Oh, hi boys, how you doing? Blah blah blah." And she hands my dad an envelope. In the envelope were tickets to see the WWF.
Wow.
I had no clue what it was at the point, but I distinctly remember walking in the arena and walking down the little tunnel from the what's the word I'm looking? From the concourse. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Into the arena itself. You walk in, and I just saw this ring and just a haze of smoke.
Wow.
And spotlights, and I just said, "Wow, this is interesting." And then after the show, I was hooked. So, I mean, really, that's how being a wrestling fan started for me, was perpetrated on a lie.
Cool. Did you ever get that ice cream, or did you not care come the end?
Yes, we did, actually. Do you remember back in the day when the WWF used to have those ice cream bars with the wrestlers on them? Yes. I got one of those, and it was the best. It was the best ice cream I ever had.
I never had one of those. I think it was back probably sort of 10 years or so ago when CM Punk brought it up as part of his sort of promo back then that he was going to bring them back. I thought, I remember seeing the pictures, and I always wanted one. But
I remember being mad at my father because he went and got us the ice cream, and he came back and gave me Junkyard Dog, and I wanted Macho Man Randy Savage.
No.
I was mad.
That's bad.
I was mad.
So what sort of era are we talking about? I mean, you sort of hinted there. I'm guessing, obviously, late 80s. What year was it? Do you remember?
It was 1987.
Wow. Okay. Cool year.
Because I remember the main event of my first match was Raymond Rougeau and Dino Bravo versus the British Bulldogs with Matilda.
Wow.
So that gives you an idea.
Yeah.
And then the next event that happened was about two and a half months later. The main event was Randy Savage as WWF champion versus King Harley Race.
Wow. Not a lot of people will get to see that. I mean, obviously not anymore, but that's quite a. Did that match seem like it had the sort of big time feel to it? Because I know Harley Race's WWF run wasn't as fruitful. Wasn't really, I feel, his most respected time in his career.
No, I think around that time was when Harley was kind of on the downswing of his career. He had his legendary run in the NWA and a little bit in WCW, but then he came over to the WWF. I think it was one of those situations where he didn't need to go to the WWF. No. He really didn't, to cement his legacy, but he went, and Vince is Vince. Mm-hmm. He has who he thinks should be champion, but I remember being intrigued by that match. And I didn't realize it at the time. I was 8 years old, that there were two legends standing in the ring. I was like, Ray, I was a huge Randy Savage fan, and I got to see him with the championship belt and Miss Elizabeth. So that part was all going on. Yeah. But seeing him and Harley Race, I think about it now, and it's like, wow, I got to see that live and not on television.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just it blows my mind.
I spoke to a couple of guys for this feature that by the time this goes out, sort of will have been put out there. But I only get to saw the WWF once. I've gone to a couple of independent shows since over here in the UK, but it's always intrigued me what you see or what you would have seen at an old school WWF house show. Because I used to go through the results in the independent magazines that I used to get. And I was amazed, some of these matches you would never see on TV, some of these pairings. It's almost like that was their chance to kind of put something different out there, see how it goes kind of thing.
Exactly.
Do you remember any others that you saw around about that time that you
I remember seeing The Undertaker versus Giant Gonzalez.
Okay.
There's a name you haven't heard in a few minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've seen The Undertaker live in Utica 3 or 4 times, and 9 times out of 10 he's wrestling local Joe Blow, and it's a 10-second match. But the match with him and Giant Gonzalez, I just remember because there were just these 2 towering figures in the ring, and I was a little older at that time, so but still, I've seen The Undertaker a number of times. Funny enough, I've seen Randy Savage wrestle live 8 times.
Wow.
I actually went back and counted all the shows that he was on. And of all the superstars that I've seen, my all-time favorite I've seen live the most, which is, to me, is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. There's not going to be another one like him. I know it's cliche, but not in
a million years.
When I got to see WWF, it was a good era. It was 97. It was just starting.
So that was around the Austin Rock era, just kind of starting to blossom.
Just before that, yeah. So I was at One Night Only, which was in September. So that was the one that just came just after SummerSlam and Ground Zero. So you've got, unfortunately, Austin was injured. He wasn't there, but that was just when he was feuding with the Hart Foundation. DX had just formed. So, you had that going on as well.
Okay.
And it was a very interesting time. I would much rather say I've seen that than see a lot of the current stuff that they're doing, I must admit. But Randy Savage was one of those that I kind of regret not ever making it to an event to see, because
he was just on and this was Randy Savage back when he had that big robe and he would put his arms out, and it would just, this was back before the cowboy hat and the tassels, which don't get me wrong, was great for Randy Savage, but the old school with the sunglasses and the headband and the big robe, that's Randy Savage to me. That I will always remember him that way. He was just on a different level. Really, just his energy, his intensity. But not only that, the way he worked in the ring and the way he worked outside the ring, all the little intricacies of professional wrestling that a lot of people don't, the psychology that goes behind it. Hiding behind Miss Elizabeth when somebody would come after him, and that whole angle there, it was just brilliance in front of you. And I didn't realize it then, but now you go back and you look at it, and it's just it's mind blowing. You
can see where he has guys like him have inspired guys, who have come through in the last sort of 15 years or so, but it never replicated. I quite liked, I didn't watch it much at the time, but I saw when CM Punk, I think it must have been just after Randy Savage passed, I'm not sure, but CM Punk wrestled in tights, that were just like Randy Savage's with the stars on and everything, and finished with the elbow and whatever. And I thought things like that were kind of cool, when new school remembers old school in the best way without trying to basically say I'm the new one, kind of thing.
Exactly.
So bringing it back to yourself then. So that was the moment that you discovered wrestling. So your involvement in wrestling, I believe you actually trained as a wrestler to begin with. Is that right?
I did. I actually trained in Enfield, North London.
Yeah, over in the UK. So that makes it even more kind of intriguing.
It was at the North London Martial Arts Academy. For the life of me, I cannot remember what road it was on.
Okay.
And I really should have done my research, but
so from being a young boy, from that point, had it been a dream of yours for a while to get in the ring, or was it something that while you were over here you just thought, I'll give it a go?
Always a dream. always, I knew from that moment on, I wanted to be involved in professional wrestling in one way or another.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm not 6'6" or 280 pounds. I'm 5'6" and 200 pounds. So God didn't bless me with the physical attributes to be a superstar, which is fine. But
although
you know,
these
as my
days
mother,
you would. These days you would.
I would, but
back in that era.
I'm a little too old to be getting back in the ring now.
Never say
But
never.
as my mom says, you know, God didn't bless you with the body, but he blessed you with the mouth. So
There you go.
I decided to go the announcer route, the commentator route. So it all worked out in the end.
So round about the time that you decided that was going to be your route, how did you get into that then? Was it naturally after you started training you were getting involved in the industry that way, and then it just kind of sort of segued in, or did you have to kind of make some changes to say, this is what I want to do?
When you want to get into the pro wrestling industry, there's usually only two ways that you get into it. One, you're born into it. You're a Flair, an Orton, somebody along those lines, you know, or you're a fan. You decide, hey, I want to give this a try. So you start training, and if you last that long, you know, you get into the business. And that's the route I went. I decided I started training. And I wrestled a small handful of matches in England, but at the time I was in the military. I was in the U.S. military at RAF Lakenheath, just outside of Cambridge. And I got orders out of England.
Okay.
So my time wrestling in England was relatively short through no fault of my own.
Yeah.
But I always tried to stay involved as much as possible. And then trained a little bit when I was stationed in Texas, but it didn't really work out for scheduling reasons. And then when I finally got back to New York, I just started reaching out to some promoters saying, hey, here's my stuff. Here's what I can do for you, and so on and so on. And the promoter for a company called The Dynasty reached out, and he said, hey, you know, we'd like you to come by. I want to hear what you can do. Help us set up the ring, da-da-da-da-da. And the rest is history. I've been, you know, working with different companies here in New York and New Jersey for the last 3-4 years now.
Very cool. Very cool. Can you remember the first time that you sort of your ring announcing debut? Or was it all a bit of a blur?
No, to me, when I announce, it's all business.
Sure.
So I remember, I remember little things. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember the suit I wore, what I looked like, and I made sure that I looked the part. I'm a firm believer in, if you're going to get into that ring, you are a representative of that company or that person that hired you.
Yeah.
And you want to look your best. You want to make sure that you represent that person the right way.
Yeah.
Nothing drives me nuttier than going to a show and seeing somebody climb in the ring with jeans, t-shirts, sneakers, or just looking like they just rolled off the back of a truck.
Yeah.
It just drives me nuts. But I remember it was a blast, you know, yes, you try to be professional, but the key is have fun. Just go out there and have fun with it. And that's what I did.
So you're like the ring announcers are like the ringmasters almost in the circus, sort of, as far as I can see it. You know, I think it's probably the one role that, especially when I was growing up, was not appreciated as much as it should be, because you kind of think that there's just someone, he goes in, he's given a card with details on, he just reads them out. But you're the one that's got to get the crowd involved and get the crowd warmed up and interested. So for you, how do you do that when you come out into a show? What do you do first to get the crowd going?
Before you leave the curtain, you have to be ready. You have to make sure that you look the part, like, you know, we mentioned a second ago. You have to make sure that you're ready, that if you go out there and you're in a bad mood, or, you know, you just have this, I don't want to be here attitude, the crowd is going to see that and they're going to play off of that. So you go out there with a load of energy, because you are the warm-up act for that show. You go out there, and if you go out there and you're like, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to such and such arena. Tonight we have blah, blah, blah. But if you go out there and you're just a ball of fire and you're a ball of energy, they're going to feed off of that. And you're getting them warmed up for what's about to happen.
Yeah, definitely. Who
So
inspired you? Who? Sorry, cutting in there.
no, go ahead. I
was going to say, who inspired you back in the beginning to? Were there any in particular that not that you want to emulate, but any announcers that you really drew inspiration from?
Howard Finkel, Mean Gene Okerlund.
Wow. Okay. Very different answer. I like that. I like that. Yeah. I mean, you can't deny Howard Finkel is probably the biggest legend, in terms of wrestling ring announcers.
Howard Finkel was the soundtrack of my childhood, man. He narrated my childhood. A lot of people say, "Oh, I wish I could have Morgan Freeman narrate my day for me." No, Howard Finkel, man. If I had the money, I'd pay Howard Finkel to announce me every time I entered a room.
That would be amazing. I must admit, because I know you see it hashtag now, and new and still whenever there's a title match. I think correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he really made that.
He did.
That was his kind of, hearing that was what made a big title change even more special.
Oh, chills.
His
every time, like I was watching not too long ago, we went back and I can't remember, I think it was WrestleMania 4 when Savage won the title from the tournament, and Howard Finkel came out and new every time, just shivers up my spine. I love it. Yeah,
it's similar for me because I think you say you've done some commentary as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've only just really realized lately what really drew me to wrestling or kept me with it as a kid. It's because I used to have tapes on TV in my room while I played with wrestling figures or whatever. But I heard it. I may not have been watching it, but it's the commentators, it's the interviews, it's the ring announcing, it's the sound of wrestling, which really, I think, brings back the memories. And one in particular, I remember, because we had Sky TV over here. My mum had just bought it, but she hadn't subscribed to Sky Sports. And it was the night of the not Royal Rumble, WrestleMania 12.
Oh, okay.
Massive Shawn Michaels fan at the time. So what you could do back then is if you hadn't subscribed to particular channels, you got the sound, but you got like white noise on the screen. You couldn't see what's happening, but you could hear it. So I woke up past midnight, school the next morning, and I had it on in my bedroom at the foot of my bed, and I would just listen to the entire 1 hour Iron Man match.
Oh,
and
wow.
It was that moment when I was trying to piece together at the end when they were going to overtime, and I could just see it going off in my head, but it was the commentary and then the announcement at the end, which really, that moment, I was almost like I wasn't seeing it, but I felt it.
Yeah.
It was, what do you prefer doing if you had a choice between ring announcing and commentating, or isn't there much of a choice between them?
Personally, I would prefer ring announcing. I mean, that's what I love. That's what I'm familiar with, because when you ring announce, you get to interact with the crowd a little bit.
Yeah.
When I ring announce, I love interacting with the crowd. I like getting in the ring. And if I see somebody wearing an ugly t-shirt, I'll get in the ring and I'll say something like, "Oh, don't you guys like the suit I'm wearing? I really dressed for the occasion. Unlike this guy in that ugly t-shirt, my God," And, the crowd knows it's all fun.
Yeah.
So they feel like they're a part of the show.
Yeah.
I like to use a little bit of, I don't know if you're familiar with Don Rickles, American comedian Don Rickles.
Yes. Now that you mention his name, yes, I do know him.
His thing was he would go into the crowd and he would make fun of people.
Right.
I mean, he would just eviscerate people, but they all knew that it was fun. It was part of the show. So they felt like they were a part of the show. And that's kind of what I like to do. But I like ring announcing just because there's more of a connection with the audience. Sure. Whereas when you're doing commentary, your audience, if it's live, your audience is not in front of you. But if it's recorded, your audience won't be in front of you for a week or 2 weeks. Yeah. But when you're in the ring, it's instant. You're right there, and really you control the pace of the show.
Yeah.
Brilliant. When you're doing commentary, you control the pace of whatever the people are watching when they're watching it.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Absolutely. No, perfectly. It answers it perfectly. What's some of the promotions that you worked for sort of in your career so far, or who you're still working for? Have you got any that you've been with long term, or do you kind of bounce from one to the other?
I started with a company called The Dynasty based out of here in Albany, New York, and they're kind of see, the thing is with the pandemic, everything is kind of on a hiatus. So
Yeah.
they're on a hiatus due to the pandemic. There's another company called Immortal Championship Wrestling, again, on hiatus due to the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I recently worked with a company called Global Syndicate Wrestling out of New Jersey. They just did a show at the Monster Factory in New Jersey, which, by the way, if you're looking for a place to train, the Monster Factory is the place to go. If you're looking to travel to New Jersey, if you're in the UK. But I'm going to be doing shows with a company called Northern Federation Wrestling, which is based out of here in Albany. We're going to be doing a show in New Jersey because we can't wrestle in New York right now because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But a lot of the companies that I've worked for currently on hiatus because of everything going on with COVID. And but a lot of my experience comes in the, I hate to say mainstream sports, but sports world, basketball, collegiate basketball,
the ones
football.
that are still
able to function.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Won't be long, hopefully.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, and the world just goes absolutely mental. I know they're on about WrestleMania being ticketed, and actually fans in attendance. We'll see.
But that's in Florida. Florida is a completely different entity in itself.
Yeah.
They kind of do things how they want, when they want.
Sure.
I mean, they recently held the Super Bowl in the very same building that WrestleMania is going to be. And the WWE actually used the Super Bowl as an example of how they could possibly do it. And the Super Bowl was highly successful.
Yeah.
I don't believe there were any positive tests that traced back. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't watch. I mean, I've seen snippets of what WrestleMania was last year, but to me, the notion of having a WrestleMania with no fans was horrifying. Really.
It was odd.
Yeah.
I'm not. It didn't feel like a WrestleMania. It just felt like, and what really hit me was at the very end when Drew McIntyre won the championship. And he's up on the corner and he's yelling and he's holding the belt and it was silent.
Yeah. That should have been his moment that he'd been working towards. And
normally it should have been 85,000 people losing their ever-loving minds, but it was silent and it did not feel right. And I was happy for Drew because I love Drew. And, he's worked with a lot of my friends in the UK and I know they were happy for him. And it was like his moment was stolen. Yeah. And it was heartbreaking for me.
There's talk that he's going to be involved in some kind of angle at WrestleMania where he gets that moment that he missed out on. We'll see. But I think as a Brit, really, it would have been nice to be able to say that one of our own had that WrestleMania moment, but
right.
We'll see if they put that right. So what do you see? You've worked obviously mainly with independent promotions. Mm-hmm. So what would you say from whatever experience you've had with, as a fan going and seeing, the WWF or whatever back in the day, what do you feel the independent promotions have got these days that sort of has made indie wrestling what it is? Because back in the day, after the territories died, you didn't really hear much of the undercurrent, the underground of the wrestling scene. But it seems to have exploded. The indies are so respected these days. What is it from your experience that is making that happen?
The talent, the people involved, no question about it. You look at the people that are on the independent circuit today, and there's too many to mention, but there's so much unbelievable talent. Not just the higher, the upper echelon names, but you go all the way down, even to many of the local promotions. There are a lot of kids who come out of training camp, who come out of their camps or their training or whatever. They're, as we say here in the States, green as goose shit. I don't know if I can swear in your program.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. It's fine.
I'm sorry if I offended anybody. But you get these kids who are fresh out of camp and they go out there, and even if it may not be the cleanest wrestling, it may not flow very well, but these kids are going out there and they're giving it their all. because they love what they do. So that, I mean, it's the talent, but it's not just the folks under the spotlight. It's the folks behind the scenes. They're just dedicated, hardworking. Everybody from the ring crew to the ring announcer, to the referee, to the video crew, the folks that set up the guardrails, they're there because they love wrestling. And that's, you're seeing a lot of the independent companies getting more to the wrestling, and they're there to put on a great show. And that's what's most important. I think that's part of what you lose when you get to the bigger companies. Because they're more about the ratings and more about this, and not so much about making the crowd go home happy.
I suppose they spend a lot of time writing, the what's going to happen, writing the storylines behind it all, and I mean, I don't know. I know the indie promotions got their own version of that, but from what I've seen,
well, you get some folks in the indies who, yes, they may have some sort of storyline that they work through, but I think some of the best matches you'll find are two people wrestling each other for the first time, no story behind it, and you just say, you know what, guys, go out there and tear the house down.
And
you just go do it, and they go out there and they tear the house down.
In your opinion, out of the talent that you've sort of either you've introduced, you've worked around, are there any names in particular that you can see or you think that one day will break into the mainstream?
Richard Holiday is number one.
Cool.
I don't know if you're familiar with Richard.
I'm not. No.
He works with MLW. He's the current Caribbean champion for Major League Wrestling. He is the most marketable man in wrestling.
Cool. Okay.
He's an amazing talent. He's got a great look. Former collegiate football player, American football player. He's 6'3", 6'4", 215, 220. Great look, great gimmick. I mean, he's got it.
Yeah.
I think he's one of those people that's kicking in the door that's on the verge of breaking. I mean, he's on his way there. Alexander Hammerstone.
Okay.
Another one. Don't know if you're familiar with him or your listeners are familiar. Another Major League Wrestling guy.
Cool.
Amazing physique. Absolutely stunning. You just have to Google him.
Yeah.
There's Alexander Hammerstone, Richard Holiday. I'm trying to think. There's a lot of folks here on the Northeast. Brandon Kirk is another one. Casey Cattell is a great female wrestler.
Yeah.
Trish Adora. Really, if you go and you look at, and if your listeners go and they Google independent wrestlers in the Northeast, and you just look at all the companies and just start making your way down the list, you'll see that there's so much untapped talent.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of great folks that are on the verge. They're almost there.
Yeah. And the great thing is these days, there's the avenues and the options available for them.
Oh yeah.
There's so many ways in now. I mean, NXT, for all the times that I knock the current product and that, I think NXT is doing something fantastic, which if you had the equivalent of that back in the early to mid 90s, maybe 1995 wouldn't have been so dire. So,
they did. It was called Florida Championship Wrestling. That's where guys like Batista, Randy Orton, Roman Reigns, they all got their start down there. John Cena got his start down in Florida. At the time, it was, or no, you know what? I take that back. John Cena was Ohio Valley, which is currently being run by Al Snow.
Oh, yes. I have seen that. Yeah.
But there's so many avenues. But what you're finding though is that nowadays a lot of these a lot of this young talent are realizing that WWE may not be my only avenue.
Exactly.
Now you have AEW.
Yeah.
You have Major League Wrestling, and now even here in the States, the NWA is getting ready to come back in, I think it's like a month or a couple of months or so. They're on the verge of breaking back huge.
I was really happy to see that, because when they launched, or when I discovered that they had launched like last year with Power, and it was on YouTube, I was like, my prayers have been answered. There's old school studio wrestling.
I absolutely loved it. I said to myself, this is beautiful because it's different.
Yeah.
It's not the big arena show, and it's not a big, pyro lights or whatever. It's It's in an old TV studio in Georgia.
Takes
In
you right
Atlanta.
back. You see old videos of Ric Flair and the Horsemen in a studio and a ring, which looked exactly like that.
As we say in the States, old Saturday night 6:05.
That's it.
6:05 p.m.
Yeah. When they brought that, because that was one thing that was a little lost on me, I must admit, because they brought back the television championship and they made the time limit was 6 minutes 5 for all the matches, and people were saying, the relevance to that, and I was like,
well,
I
the original concept, the reason why like old WCW Saturday Night and everything went on the air at 6:05 was Ted Turner's idea.
Okay.
Ted Turner, obviously, if you're not familiar with Ted Turner, for your listeners, Ted Turner was a big broadcast giant here in the States. He founded CNN, TBS, which was another station here in the States, but he had this idea that at the top of every hour, you're flipping channels to see what's on.
Yeah.
That takes about 5 minutes before you get sick of it and you settle on a show. So after that 5 minutes, his wrestling program is just starting. And usually by then you've already missed the first 5 minutes or whatever it is you want to watch. So you're like, I can't watch this anyway. So he said, my program is just starting. It's a wrestling program. Watch my show.
That's brilliant.
And on a Saturday night, 9 times out of 10, you're just finishing dinner or you're getting ready to sit down for dinner. So it was all. So that's where the whole 6:05 thing played in.
And then they made the time limit that to pay homage, I think, to that. That's which is quite cool. Because when I grew up with the WCW television title, I think it was 15 minutes.
Right, usually 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, and pretty much every match I saw on the pay-per-view, I was unlucky to see a time limit draw. It didn't really draw me to the TV title, but a fair play to them for bringing that back. And I hope they do make it. I know they've lost a few of the stars they had right before they shut down, like Eli Drake. I hadn't really known Eli Drake when he was in TNA Impact.
You need to go watch his stuff, man. Dude, he is a world champion in the making.
When I saw him on NWA, and I knew of his name, but I'd never watched him. And just again, he's a talker. He's one that he reminded me. I could close my eyes and imagine Steve Austin because he had that same kind of draw. But he was, again, there's something about him. And I suppose, a little disappointed to see that he had gone over to NXT because I was really hoping that he would still be in the NWA and sort of pull through. But.
Oh, so do I. Eli Drake, or LA Knight as he's known now. The dude's got charisma for days.
Yeah, he has. He has.
I think he is a WWE champion waiting to happen. I just pray that if and when he makes it to the main roster that it doesn't flounder.
Yeah, I thought the same of Marty Scurll, the villain. Yeah, he's kind of. If I was to pick anyone from the current era, and not just because he's a Brit, but he's the one that I've gravitated towards because of his character.
Right.
And I got to meet him when he was in Exeter 4 or 5 years ago. And it's the first time I saw him with that persona, and it really stuck with me. I thought this harks back to the kind of identities that used to be around, and he's playing it absolutely perfectly. But then when he left Ring of Honor, there were reports that he may be on his way to NXT or WWE. Right. And if that happens, I hope they just do not mess with his character.
Oh, no, I agree. I agree.
We'll see. So in your time, have you got the opportunity to announce any sort of big or classic names for any of your promotions when you've been there?
Oh yeah, I've called for Jake the Snake Roberts. The Snake Roberts, childhood hero of mine, and actually, I'll have to send it to you. But I actually had the chance to get a photo with Jake, and he was just such a great guy. Yeah. I mean, he was the guy when we got to the venue that night. He was in the locker room just by himself, just kind of sitting there, or whatever. And he would sit there, and he'd be like, when we all got in, he was like, "Come on, boys, get a chair. I want to tell you some stuff." Jake the Snake Roberts says he wants to tell stories. You get a chair and you sit around like you're sitting around a campfire. It's like it was just the stories he told were fantastic.
Yeah.
Jake the Snake Roberts, Shane Douglas, the franchise.
Cool.
I had the chance to work with. Billy Gunn, Carlito. Not really. I don't want to say they're not legends because they're still great performers.
Yeah, they're ones certainly that I remember, at the height of my fandom, they were there, and a lot of people that listen to this be the same kind of thing. So
let's see, I've worked with Bob Backlund.
Okay.
True legend right there. Bob Backlund, the Sandman from ECW.
Wow.
Actually took a cane shot from the
Really?
Sandman. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's a good thing he told me. I remember we were backstage and we were kind of going over what was going to happen that night. And he looks at me, and he had probably already had 2 or 3 beers at that point. And he looks at me and he goes, "You ever taken a cane shot?" I said, "No, I haven't." "Well, you're going to tonight. You might want to go put on another jacket." I was like, all right. So I went and I put on, I was refereeing that night, so I had my referee shirt on, but I had found a good size jacket, and sure enough, that night I took a shot right in the back, and that was kind of like my initiation.
That's brilliant.
Funny thing is, that same night I got to work with Joel Gertner
from
ECW.
Yeah,
that was interesting.
Yeah, I bet.
Let's see. I've worked with Brian Pillman Jr., another young up and coming star.
That's pretty cool. I'm really pleased that Pillman's legacy. I know Brian Pillman Jr. has got his own thing going on and that, but
exactly,
it's so good to see that it's still carrying on.
Yeah, his father was so good, just so naturally gifted, and it was just a shame when he passed away.
Yeah.
But you watch his son, you watch Brian Pillman Jr., whether it's on AEW or in the independent scene, and it's mirror image. The talent and the ability and the natural talent is there.
It's in the blood.
And it's great to see. And we were talking that night, and I told him, I said, I know you've heard this 1,001 times, but man, you remind me so much of your father.
Yeah.
And he nodded and, thank you. That's such a compliment. And I know it's something he's heard 1,001 times. So he's probably like, oh, fuck, here we go.
Yeah. But even to look at him, he's got that look. So,
he does.
I don't think he's ever going to shake that necessarily, but that's possibly him embracing it in his own way.
No.
So,
and it's one of those things where, he's going to be compared to his father for his entire life. And I'm sure it's something he's heard his entire career, but you can't ignore it.
No,
you just cannot ignore it.
No, I know. I've seen reports that David Benoit is, training. He's sort of getting into the industry, and there were people sort of surmising what would happen if you put together David Benoit and Brian Pillman Jr. Going back to the Horseman days, that'd be something special.
That would be. That would be. David Benoit has a huge hill to climb.
Yeah.
Not just in the wrestling ring. And that's for a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
And it's a shame, but again, that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
David Benoit's got a huge hill to climb, but I think if he goes out there and he establishes himself, I think he'll be okay.
I got to respect the decision for him to keep his name, because there were theories flying around what his ring name would be. But he's putting himself out there. He's Benoit. He's not running away from that.
Well, he looks just like his father. You cannot deny that.
No.
And now we're in an age where if you try to fool the fans, they're going to pick up on it.
Yeah.
They already know who he is.
Yeah.
So going out there and putting a different name on it, it's like taking a Ford and putting a Chevy sticker on it and saying this is a Chevy.
But no.
But I think if David Benoit goes out and he establishes himself and goes out there and just does what he does and does what he loves, I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It'd be good to see. You've kind of answered one of my next questions already, because I was going to ask
Yes.
if it's kind of blurred between, you know, your ring announcing and you've obviously you trained to be a wrestler in the beginning. Do you still take bumps, or have you taken bumps
Oh,
as
yeah.
a ring announcer? Have
Oh,
you
yeah.
been you okay? Tell us about sort of
I
any of those occasions.
took a cane shot from the Sandman. No, I've worked a couple angles where where I would be doing an in-ring interview, and you know that I get on the heel's bad side, or I irritate him and he punches me, or he puts me in a sleeper hold or something like that. But there have been a couple times when I've thrown the tights back on, laced up the boots, and had legit matches.
Fantastic. So it's not like tuxedo matches that Howard Finkel was involved in or anything like that.
No. No, I try to, even if it's just for training purposes, sometimes I'll throw on the boots. I'll get in the ring before a show. I'll run the ropes, take a bump here and there. I'll do some rolling around just to stay loose, but I miss it.
Yeah.
You know, I miss getting in the ring. Pardon me again. I miss getting in the ring and taking bumps. It's fun. To me, it's fun.
It looks fun. I've been watching. I've spent half my time watching documentaries, especially lately. I've found some great ones on the indie scene in particular.
Yeah.
And, you know, you really see the guys starting right from the beginning, and you know what they learn to do. And you know, I think a lot of people probably go into it thinking straight away they're going to learn to do all these high fly moves or whatever. But start simple: how to fall, how to take a bump, and it's I can imagine the toll it takes on your body after a few.
It definitely takes a toll, you know, not just taking a bump. When you take a bump, like you take your basic back bump, it's the equivalent of being in a 35-mile-an-hour car crash.
Wow. Okay.
That's the effect it has on your body. Just think about it. You see these guys taking these huge bumps. They're throwing themselves back, and you're landing on wood, you know, wooden planks, giant wooden planks, a metal ring. You know, there's a little bit of give, but it's no trampoline. Trust me. No. But it's, you know, when you're in the ring, it's adrenaline, and you don't initially feel it, but then you get home that night or the morning after the adrenaline wears off. Yeah. That's when the whole, oh my God.
So how do you get back in and do it the next day? I think that's one of the things that I've always
you
wondered.
Get up and you do it.
Yeah.
You get up and you do it. You know, with me, it's not so much getting up in the ring. It's like getting up and you have to keep your body ready to go. So I go to the gym a lot. I hit the weights. I do a little bit of cardio here and there. It's vital to keep your body in as top shape as you possibly can. Yeah.
Are there any sort of memorable or embarrassing moments you've had in your career? Either or, really, or both?
In the wrestling ring, no. In the MMA world, yes. There was an event that I was working, I want to say about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. And the fight had come down to a decision. Now, the way that works, if the fight comes to a decision, you have to wait for the judges to give you the little piece of paper with the scores on it, and they tell you who won, red or blue corner, whatever. Yeah. So I get the thing, open it up, and I'm looking at it. And I read the judges scored 25 or 20, 30, 29 in favor of the red corner, blah, blah, blah. So it said the winner of this fight by unanimous decision out of the red corner, that part I got right.
Right.
I called the other person's last name. While the referee raises the one kid's name or one kid's hand, I announce the other guy, and the other guy's like, I won? And everybody just stopped and looked at me, and I just went, shit.
No.
But it happens.
Yeah,
it happens.
Even you say like as recent as a year and a half ago. So you've been doing it a while and still making.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
It happens. It happens. But that's the most embarrassing thing that's happened to me in the cage or in the ring.
Yeah.
Or what have you.
I've heard you say I listened to another interview that you did recently. And there is a particular there's a wrestler who I think you mentioned saying that you is it you sort of you put something into his announcements when you're announcing to try to get him to break character. Can you share that for us?
There was a wrestler, very good friend of mine, very awesome guy. His name is Daniel. His shoot name is Daniel Roberts, but he went by Sergeant Fury. Huge comic book guy, Army vet, and him and I, we just, from the moment we met, we hit it off because I was in the U.S. Air Force, so we're both veterans, and we both have a very sick, twisted, dark sense of humor. So before a show, we were I forgot what we were talking about, and he just kind of turned away. I said, "You know what? I'm going to get you to break tonight. Watch. Just watch." So he comes down the ring, and I said, weighing 225 pounds of pure sexy. And that wasn't his character at all, because he would come out with the Army camouflage and the post-apocalyptic whatever. He didn't break. Wow. He gets in the ring. He goes, "Try again." He like leaned over. He goes, "Try again, pal." I was like, all right. So the next event, I came out and I announced him as 225 pounds of spaghetti and meatballs. And he kind of laughed and he smirked and he goes, "Okay, getting closer. And then the third night, oh God, what did I announce him as? I can't remember what I announced him as, but that broke him.
Oh, brilliant.
That he was coming down the aisle and I announced him as 225 pounds of whatever. And he broke. He doubled. He had his arms up and he just doubled over and he gets in the ring and he whispers in my ear. He's like, "You son of a bitch."
Do you think part of it was he was expecting it? So he was probably already kind of suppressing.
I knew he was.
Yeah.
I think it was just a matter of what I said.
It's a great phrase. Great phrase we use over here called the giggle loop. So if you're trying so hard not to laugh at something, it makes it near impossible.
Oh yeah. And again, that's one of the little things about independent pro wrestling, just pro wrestling in general, that I absolutely love, is just the little jokes and the little things that happen that the fans don't see.
Yeah. And there's things that happen at these events as well. After speaking to a couple of the guys for the recent Facebook fan episode I did, things that happen even at the mainstream house shows that, they have moments in there where it's just for the fans to see, those little jokes that go off, which is, someone breaks character, but you'll never see it for TV. It's just someone's got that memory. So
Kevin Owens, who he actually, his independent days, he used to wrestle here in upstate New York. Okay. Because he's from Canada, which is not far from here. It's only like maybe 3.5, 4 hours from where we are. So he would come down and wrestle in New York a lot. And he often made it a point to try to get his opponents to break in mid-match.
Wow.
And there's even video of him and Roman Reigns.
Okay.
In ring at a house show, where a fan was heckling Kevin Owens for one reason or other. And he shouts something out like, "Listen, pal, I make more in this match than you make in a year. Sit down and shut up." And you can see Roman Reigns laughing hysterically.
That's brilliant. You'd love to be able to say you've seen one of those, and you've seen these guys on the screen as one thing, but then you see them as real people. Even though they're doing their job in the ring, you still see, they're still human. Yeah. So getting to the last couple of questions that I've got that I want to rattle off. So you've done a lot, you've fulfilled a lot of roles in the wrestling industry. Are there any other roles left that you either wanted when you started out to try out, or have since, wanted to move into that you haven't yet sort of sampled?
I mean, I've done pretty much everything, really. I mean, announcing, refereeing, managing. I've run Gorilla. I mean, the one thing I never did when I wrestled was hold a championship, hold a title.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the one thing I never did. And it's been weighing on me that it's never happened. And I've always said, there's that saying in wrestling, never say never.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Never say never. And I'm not going to lie, I would be lying if I said that I didn't pull my gear bag out and look at my gear and just give it a think.
Yeah.
Could I do it? Could there be one more run left in me?
One more match. You can just hear it now.
I can, and I've been hearing it for a while. So I never say never. That's all I'm going to say.
You got to keep us all posted on that, because I'd love to. I'd
Oh,
love to say
definitely.
that. I'd love to say that you managed to announce that on here and it actually happened. So
Well, you never know.
cool. So I understand as well that you're involved with the International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us
Yes.
a little bit about that. How are you involved? How did it come about?
Well, I do a lot of social media relations with the International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. And it is what it exactly it says it is. We are the Hall of Fame for international professional wrestling. We preserve the history of this great industry. But we don't just take a look at pro wrestling here in the United States. We look at Japan, the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, all over the world,
Yeah.
because pro wrestling is not just centered on the United States.
No.
It is not. There are so many great talent from overseas, guys like, we'll say, from the United Kingdom, Johnny Saint, Johnny Kidd, Robbie Brookside. I mean, these guys are legends. Steve Gray.
Yeah.
I actually had the opportunity when I was up and coming in the United Kingdom to referee Johnny Kidd versus Steve Gray.
Wow.
And it was a clinic. I remember I said to Johnny Kidd backstage, I said to him, is there anything that I need to know? He goes, yes, know this. Just stand back and watch. I was like, okay, you're the boss.
Yeah.
And I did, and it was just an amazing match. It was just an amazing match to work. But you even look Japan, so many legends, Antonio Inoki, just all these names. And really our job is to preserve the history of professional wrestling, but we're also recognized here in New York State as an educational institution because we also educate the people on the history of pro wrestling. Wow. And coming up this August, we're going to have our inaugural induction, which was originally supposed to take place last summer, but with the pandemic, everything put on hold. We're moving it forward to the end of this August 28th, here in Albany, New York. You can find details on it on our website, prowrestlinghall.org. You can also follow us on social media. You just look up International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame and we will pop right up. We're holding our inaugural induction. 24 of the biggest names in history are going to be inducted. Names like Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Antonio Inoki. So go there. If you're looking to fly over to the United States and join us, you are more than welcome. We're going to ticket information is going to be released very soon. So, and it's going to be limited, obviously, because pandemic and so on. It's going to be limited, so tickets are going to go fast. But get all your information there. Sign up for our newsletter. We do accept donations. Here in the States, it's tax deductible. You can write it off on your taxes. I don't know how the UK handles it. But you can always make donations to the hall. You can sign up for our newsletter, get insider information on on tickets. But definitely check us out on social media. It's a great organization, and we're hoping to have as we call it here in the States, a brick and mortar.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Is it going to be something physical to always commemorate it? Awesome.
Soon, again, we were extremely close before the pandemic hit, and then COVID put the brakes on everything. So we're initially starting from scratch, so to speak.
Wow, that's amazing. I'll definitely be checking that out. That's wish you all the best with that, and hope you get all the support in the world, because that's definitely something that the industry needs.
It is, and we also, we're making waves. We have Bruno Sammartino's WWF championship. It is in our possession.
Wow.
This is the championship that he carried around for a number of years.
That is amazing. How did that come about? Has that been sort of donated? You can't say
that is a story for the president of the Hall of Fame, because he is the one that is physically in possession of the belt.
Wow. That's, you can't get, I know they're on about the WWF having a physical one, and they would have obviously an unimaginable variety of things that they could put in there. But that's definitely something that not everyone is going to.
That is often considered as the holy grail of championships. Yeah,
that's amazing. Well, there you go. I mean, that's just sort of cements what the great work that you're doing already, and how how respected this kind of thing is.
And as the Hall of Fame works and we start building up the physical location, which will be here in New York, once we build up the physical location, then obviously we'll have various displays, robes, boots, ring-worn gear, photos, autographs.
Yeah.
My personal favorite, I love the posters, like the old school posters.
Yeah.
Things like that you would find in a Hall of Fame or that you would find in a museum that just take you trips down memory lane, classic photos, classic videos, which, by the way, brings me to this point. We also recently procured 3,500 hours of classic unseen. When I say unseen, I mean unseen footage of guys like Steve Austin, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, some of the biggest names in wrestling history. It's called the Savoldi Library.
Okay.
If you ever get the opportunity, look it up. 3,500 hours of classic unseen video. I mean, this is the video that a certain company in Connecticut is salivating to have in their possession.
That is amazing as well. And the plans for something like that, I mean, eventually having somewhere you can display that, or would it sort of be kept under lock and key?
No. I mean, it to me, it would be criminal for us to have that kind of resource and not share it with the people that love this business.
Yeah.
Because these are some of the biggest names, of their Stone Cold Steve Austin, Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, the unseen video.
Fantastic.
For us to say, no, it's ours, you can't have it.
Yeah.
To me, that's just criminal, man.
Yeah. A certain someone would do that, I'm sure, if it was in there. So keep that baby safe. So one final question. I like to have anyone who listens to this show knows when I have a guest on, I like to do a little bit of fantasy booking to wrap it up.
Ooh.
So I kind of been mixing it up, because when I've had guys in who were wrestlers, I've asked them if they could book a match at WrestleMania, who would they want to face? Is there a particular match they wanted to have had? For yourself, if you could have announced any match, now this could be any pairing, not necessarily a match that's happened at WrestleMania, but if you could announce a match at WrestleMania, who would be in it?
Oh man, if I had to pick one match and you mean anybody, not like a match that's happened.
No, past, present, any pairing. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a match that's actually happened.
Randy Savage from WrestleMania 3 versus Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 12.
Wow. There we go. I saw a match they had in '92, and that was one of the best things I saw from that era.
And I'm talking when these guys were in their prime.
Yeah.
I'm talking, right, but when Savage was just on the cusp of winning the heavyweight championship and he was white hot.
Yeah.
And then Shawn Michaels when he just did win the championship and he was white hot. That is a match I would have killed to see.
Yeah. So if you were to be able to announce the winner of that, who would it be?
Savage.
Yeah, obvious question.
That's only because I'm a Savage. I'm a Randy Savage guy. So
I think compare the two eras, though. You're probably right, because even though I was like I say, massive Shawn Michaels fan, I don't think you could touch Randy Savage from the late '80s. I don't think anyone really comes close.
He was, don't get me wrong. Shawn Michaels is a legend in this industry, but he was a technical guy. Savage was technical, but he was also just his intensity and the way he worked the ring was it's unparalleled in my opinion. I don't think you will see you have someone now, or you will see someone anytime soon that has that kind of intensity or just that charisma as Randy Savage.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why the golden era is untouchable, and that's why a podcast like this exists, because
exactly,
I no matter what they come out with these days, I will always go back to back then. It had everything that this one's missing, I think.
Oh yeah.
Listen, mate, so just closing, where can people find you on social media if they want to sort of keep up to date with what you're doing?
I am all over social media. You can find me at Mike A. Falvo. That's F as in Frank, A-L, V as in Victor, O is my last name, at Mike A. Falvo. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, please feel free to shoot me a friend request on Facebook. Also, myself, my two brothers, and my friend Jason have our own podcast. Shameless plug.
Nope, go ahead.
It's called Three Guides and a Goat. Guide short for Guidos because we're all Italian. You can find us on Buzzsprout. It's 3gg.buzzsprout.com. We talk American sports, a little bit of pop culture, a little bit. We go down a bunch of rabbit holes. So if your listeners are so inclined, check us out. But they can find me at Mike A. Falvo across all social media.
Thank you so much for giving us your time. This has been
Anytime,
a
dude.
blast. Yeah, no, thank you so much. I say this to many others, but because I doing this podcast has put me in touch with people that I can really go down a lot of rabbit holes with that I probably didn't have the opportunity to do it when I was growing up. So I'm going to take full advantage of it. So, if I can find another time that we can delve into something else, I'd really like that.
Definitely. I would love to come on.
Always. Well, take it easy, mate, and good luck with everything you're doing. I'll be definitely keeping an eye, and I'll speak to you soon. All right.
Definitely.
Thank you for listening to a Nerd to Know Media production.